Hello again, another Airsoft video. This is the Colt Python 357 Magnum Revolver made by Cybergun. So obviously this is a 6-shot revolver by Cybergun in the shape of the Colt Python 357 Magnum Revolver, a very iconic and well-known revolver. This is powered by a single CO2 bulb which is slotted into the bottom of the gun here in the grip. Now you remove it or add it by removing that nut there with an Allen key, which is supplied with the gun. So I'm not going to show you how to do that because it's dead simple. There's that many other videos out there to do it, but simply you just put the Allen key in there and turn it just like anything else. Take that whole cap out, drop your CO2 bulb in there. Mine already has one in there and it's pressurized and I don't want to waste it. Then obviously you just tighten it back up. Now for those who are not familiar with CO2 capsules or airsoft guns, it's just one of these. It's just a little bottle that has CO2 in them, and these vary from price. You can get them as cheap as 50 pence, or some places are as expensive as £1.50 per bulb. I definitely wouldn't pay £1.50 per bulb. Really, I mean, buy them in bulk. Buy them for about 50. Buy 50 of them, and you'll get them for about 50 pence each. That's the cheapest way to buy them. Depends where you go though. So we'll start off as always by looking at the markings and talking about the materials. So we do have some trades, which is nice. I do like that on my replicas. So obviously Python .357, and a couple of stars for some reason. 357 Magnum CTG, not got a clue what that means. Then we've got the little Colt logo, so we've got a little horse, and it looks like it's got a spear actually. I didn't notice that before, and it's got an arrow in its mouth. Cal 6mm, that's not a trade marking. That's obviously the caliber of this actual gun because it's airsoft, firing 6mm plastic BBs. Made in Taiwan. Usually Taiwanese stuff isn't actually bad, in fact it's often quite good. What I assume to be a serial number, the Pentagon with the F, to comply with German laws to say that this is a non-restricted firearm in Germany, even though it's not a firearm. It's essentially a toy, and a sticker which you can easily remove, which I generally don't. Energy spelt in a different language, I'm guessing that's German. And the power is 1.9 joules maximum. So we're looking at about a foot-pound there. Now, before I continue, as I did state, this is the 6mm airsoft version. You can get the airgun version, which is available in I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe you can get this as a 177 steel BB. It's the exact same gun, does the same thing. Obviously the 177 is an air gun, so you don't want to shoot it at people. Airsoft, these are designed for little skirmishes, paintball type skirmishes, but obviously with airsoft guns. You can't do that with an airgun version, and if you're in Scotland you'll need a license for the airgun version, whereas this, it's free to buy. Obviously if you don't have an exemption, you'll need to get it a silly colour like this, but if you've got an exemption, such as you're an airsoft player, you can. I really should talk about the exemption I got because it's the easiest one to get. You don't have to do a damn thing, and it's very cheap. If you want to know the easiest exemption that basically anyone over 18 could use to get a black airsoft gun, let me know. Now again, in Scotland we need a licence for an air gun, but we could have these same as the rest of the UK in black. So if you're interested, let me know. It's one of those things where I wasn't sure if anyone would be interested in, but I found it pretty damn helpful, and I jumped on it as soon as I found out about it. So anyway, moving on. Materials. Well, it's quite heavy and it is mostly made of metal. I very much doubt there's any steel in this at all. It'll be zinc or some other pot metal. The only plastic that I could say definitively is in this gun is in the grip. The whole thing is plastic, but then again, the real thing would also, well, I was going to say the real thing would be made of plastic as well, but it would actually be wood. But a lot of modern guns, the grips are made of plastic or some sort of polymer. I wouldn't worry about that breaking. I mean, your hand's going to be covering it, so I doubt you're going to have any problems there, unless you drop it on something pretty hard. Now, there's slotted screws there. I'm not sure if those are real screws. Now, I say I'm not sure if those are real screws, because if I just bring in my Olympic 6 blank firing revolver here, again we've got plastic handles, but those are not real screws. It's moulded in there. Not on the other side, but you can see I did try to unscrew it. But these you just sort of pry off. I think those are real screws, but I just wanted to point that out in case you did want to swap out the grips. Not sure if you could. Yeah, so I think inside there it is metal. There's a little metal chamber where your CO2 capsule goes, and I know that because I did have another revolver years ago. It was an air gun, but you can get the exact same thing as an airsoft gun. That was the Dan Wesson, the ASG Dan Wesson revolvers. It's basically the same thing, although with those revolvers the handle sort of flipped up and you sort of twisted a screw without an Allen key. It just had a little tab on it to get the CO2 bulbs in. I'll probably get the airsoft version of that revolver because they were really nicely made. I mean, the cylinder was actually CNC'd machined, and they were very inexpensive. In fact, the reason I have this is because my girlfriend thought she was buying that revolver for me. This one was a gift for Christmas, so that's how I ended up with this one. The price of these, by the way, is about £100, somewhere between £100 and £115. It was bought from Airsoft World, but it is quite similar to the ASG Dan Wesson revolver, and they're about the same price. Materials aside, operation of the gun. In fact, let's talk about the looks first. I think looks. I think it does look quite convincing. It does feel nice in the hand as well. Very heavy, but it does look nice. I've currently got this on display on the shelf that I recently made. I've made a video on that and posted photos on the Instagram. If you're interested in the little display shelf that I made for knives and airsoft guns, I basically I did all the joinery on my table. So anyway, so yeah, it does look quite convincing. I must say it's nice having airsoft guns in the proper colour, opposed to this silly bright orange. And of course we do have the recessed barrel, and if it's at the right angle, you can't actually see the airsoft inner barrel, which you can see there. So that's a brass inner barrel. In fact, I'll open up the cylinder and you should just be able to see right through there. Obviously it's smooth bore, and you can see there that's where the gas comes out. By the way, for anyone that's worried about safety, it's actually not pointing right at my face, it's pointing past me. Even though it's not loaded and there's no BBs in it, I don't like having guns pointed at me, even if it's me that's holding it. So it is actually pointing past me, for anyone that's concerned. So yeah, the inner barrel is brass. Now, with most airsoft guns, you could feel, or most CO2 replica airsoft guns, you can fuel strip this one. I'm not aware of any way to take this apart at all, and I don't really want to. I especially wouldn't want to take this plate off because there's a lot of like fine springs and a delicate mechanism in there, so I don't really want to make that mistake. But you can see there that it is mainly a screw construction with flat-headed screws. In fact, it's almost entirely flat-headed screws. You've got one there, one there, one there, and that one there's the sight adjustment, and I've barely shot it, so I don't see the point in fiddling with that. And I've got about 3 meters to shoot it just in my shed. I don't really want to shoot it in the garden because my garden is that small, and I do live in a close proximity to a school, and I'm worried about the ricochet. I'm not worried about actually shooting it, it's just a ricochet. And I don't mean a big ricochet, I'm actually worried about the BB rolling under the fence, because that is actually a crime if your projectile just leaves the garden. I'm not worried about it flying off and hitting someone in the eye. I'm fairly confident that's not going to happen. It's just I'm worried that someone might find a BB across the road because it rolled there. Okay, we'll just briefly talk about the sights. Nothing to get too excited about, just basic open sights. They'll work. I would imagine, because this is a fairly powerful airsoft gun, I know in terms of air guns it's not powerful, but for an airsoft gun, you could legally have one that's 2.5 joules. This is probably a bit much for skirmishing. I guess it depends on the site rules. The place that this came from, I was told that even 1.4 joules is too much for skirmishing for a pistol, so there's that. I guess it depends where you're playing. Operation, rather simple. You just pull this thing back, and with your other hand just push on the cylinder to open it, and do the same again, pull back and close it. Now you can just slam it shut. I recommend you not do that because you could damage the mechanism and you could mess up the timing. What I mean by that is when you cock the gun, obviously those cylinders have to line up perfectly with the barrel, and you don't want to knock that off. I actually ruined my Dan Wesson revolver by slamming it in too much, so I'm definitely not going to do it with this revolver. Speaking of which, obviously you can do that thing where you sort of see it on the movies where they hold the gun like this and they just flick it back in. Again, I'd advise you not doing that because you could damage it. And you can see there's that little piece that moves in and out, which helps keep the gun closed. In terms of loading the gun, you obviously just open it up and it comes with a speed loader. So here's the shells, which take shells. That's one of my favourite things about airsoft revolvers, as they look quite realistic. Now you could argue that those kind of look like hollow points, so it doesn't even ruin the aesthetic of having those holes there. But that's where you put the BBs. I'll show you that in a minute. But basically you just line it up. It's hard for me to do behind my phone, you see. But you just, normally it's a hell of a lot easier. It's just hard for me to see here. You just line it up and push it in, and there you go. You can buy spare shells. They're about £1.50 a shell, which if you ask me, that's an absolute rip-off. But if you want to have 2 or 3 cylinders worth and then a couple of these, I've actually got another one. I've still got my speed loader from my Dan Wesson, and it looks exactly the same. I'll show you how this works in a minute if I remember. But again, to close it, same thing, and it looks like you genuinely have a loaded revolver. Really, the only thing that gives this away from being an airsoft gun is the fact that it says Cal 6mm, and if you were to look at the bottom, you would see that. But other than that, most people are not going to know. And then obviously to unload it, you just flick that switch again. Now this does push in and out, like all revolvers. Now it's not really applicable to an airsoft revolver because these are plastic shells, not brass, and it's not expanding. Obviously on the real steel thing, once you fire it, because of the heat, those casings expand and they're more likely to get stuck. So you would use this to push it out, but we don't need to. It's nice to be able to do it, but just turn it upside down. And obviously being a revolver, the fun part is when you just get to load it in one at a time. That's something I very much enjoy doing, is just sitting around and loading the shells one at a time. It feels a lot more authentic, if you like. So if you want, you could just get one of those little billet boxes and just load a BB in them and just store it like that, just like you would real bullets. It just make it feel a lot more authentic. That's the joy of having airsoft revolvers, is you do actually get to load the shells. Same with some airsoft rifles, but they're a bit more expensive. But airsoft revolvers are generally not expensive, and you could have it so you load it via shell. And to put the BB in the shell, it's just a case of taking a BB and putting it in there. I'm going to put this shell off to the side now because obviously it's got a BB in it and it can fire, and there is gas in the gun. Really though, the easiest way to do it is just get yourself a little dish and just do that. Put that one off to the side as well. I would just like to briefly talk about the quality of the shell, because they're not that great. It is entirely plastic. You do get some airsoft guns that are brass or at least steel. This is entirely plastic with a rubber tip. It does look good, don't get me wrong, but the paint on some of them is sort of, see if I can focus it. Nope, we don't want to comply, do we? Anyway, it is sort of coming off on some of them. You can see on this one here, you can see right there the paint is, now we're focusing, paint's coming off right there, and I don't think you can get upgrade shells. And on the bottom there on the rim it just says, what does it say? 357 Magnum. It says MM357 and then Magnum, and obviously you can see it right through. It wouldn't work otherwise, because obviously the air has to come, or the gas, sorry, should it starts off in the tank here in the CO2 bulb. When you fire it, it hits a pin it's that pin, just like the gas magazines, and the air comes out of that nozzle through the shell, and obviously your BB will be sitting around there. That's how that works. Now, in terms of cocking the gun and the safety, it does have a safety. I was a bit confused on this gun, because on my Dan Wesson, you would pull the gun, you would pull this switch this way to empty it, and you would push it that way to put it on safe. This one has a completely different safety, and I wish it didn't have it. So here you've got a little window, S for safe, and you've got this switch here. Pull that back and it's on fire. That just ruins the authenticity. So if you were going to display it, you would obviously want to do it this way, because A, it's got the markings, and B, it conceals that safety. Not that I've got any problem with safety mechanisms, albeit they're a bit annoying, but the real one wouldn't have had a safety mechanism. I suppose you could probably open up and just get rid of it. That's not something I want to do. I don't like to take my things apart unless it's designed to be done so. But it moves really easily, so if you did holster this, or you were handling it a lot, especially in a skirmish, be aware of that. I mean, if the safety is on and you pull hard enough, it'll just move it out of the way and fire. So it might be a bit of a safety problem, but then again, if you're not ready to shoot, your finger should be away from the trigger anyway. Just be aware that if you are skirmishing with this, it does move very easily. In fact, I'd rather just leave it on fire and just assume the whole time that it's ready to fire anyway. So in terms of cocking the gun, it has to be on fire, so pull it back. Now this is double and single action, so you can cock the gun and you can see the cylinder will move, and we could just pull the trigger and it'll fire. And this is quite a loud one, or you could just pull the trigger straight away. And that's basically it. Now, as I did say before, I think you can adjust those sights a little bit. I've never needed to. I've never really bothered, because I'm not in a position where I could really properly test it. Also there, as you can see, that is quite grippy. It does get a little painful after time cocking that. And the grip isn't the most comfortable. It does seem a bit aggressive. It's not too uncomfortable. I mean, it is fun to shoot, and it's definitely a valued piece of my collection, and it does look nice on the wall, and it definitely wouldn't be out of place in a display cabinet with the rest of your replicas and your knives. That's basically what I'm doing with most of my replicas and my knives these days, is I'm just displaying them. I don't really have the area to shoot them, unfortunately. Anyway, I think that basically concludes this video. I don't think I've got that much more to say. I think just before I go, I'll just put it beside the Olympic 6. A totally different thing. I know, completely different size. The Colt Python is an airsoft gun. The Olympic 6 isn't a replica of anything. It's just a blank firing starting pistol. I just thought I would show you the difference, because obviously you've seen this on the channel a lot. By the way, you can see how it differs there. You pull this out to remove the cylinder, but with the Colt Python you use a switch there. Actually, one thing I did forget to mention is if you look at this, is there any shells in there? No. If you want to turn the revolver by hand, it goes both ways without a problem. I don't know if it's designed to do that, but on my Olympic 6 it only goes that way. Is that clockwise, I think? But it doesn't go the other way. Quite a big difference there. And one thing I definitely forgot to mention was, some people might get the idea of putting a live round in there. Don't, because it's illegal. But if you did put a live round in there and you did somehow make a firing pin mechanism and manage to fire it, the whole thing will blow apart on you. I mean, it's pot metal. It's not designed to contain high pressure. It's not a pressure bearing chamber is what I'm trying to say. Now, the reason I always say things like that, all these various safety things in these videos and talk about this legal nonsense, as much as I hate it, is because I feel like the media and the government sort of, and the British public in general, sort of view these things in a bad light. And the main reason, one of the main reasons for me making these videos is I want to promote these things. I think they're unfairly demonised. I love airsoft guns, I love air guns, I love all guns, I like knives. At the same time, I don't think I'm a bad person. I don't think most people that like these things are bad people. None of us really have ill intentions. We just want to enjoy our hobby and be left in peace. That's why I keep iterating these points. It just does my head in when you see an article demonising airsoft guns or blank replicas, or how easy it is to get certain knives or things like that. It just does my head in. I think we need to stop the regulation, and I feel that making videos like these help people get into the hobby, and then you have more people to defend the hobby. Anyway, that aside, I'm fairly sure that's everything now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.